audio is taken from the book Soviet Military Power. This is purely to gauge whether my audio equipment is up to snuff. Military power and its concomitant military weakness have always played a role in Russian and Soviet history. Both histories reflect a long and painful record of foreign invasions and an equally long record of imperial expansion by force of arms, weaknesses, and vulnerability balanced with raw military conquest. The military power built by Peter the Great in the late 17th and early 18th centuries was the basis of a Russia as a European power in the 18th and 19th centuries. The Russia that alone of the European powers defeated Napoleon and established a hegemony over Eastern Europe. Military power has also been a vehicle for the rise of the USSR from extreme weakness through regional dominance to global superpower. As the Russian philosopher Nikolai Berdayev observed, quote, Bolshevism entered Russian life as a highly militarized force, end quote. And the Soviet state has maintained this military focus. Indeed, some Western observers have described it as a warfare state in a condition of semi-permanent mobilization. To a greater extent than their Russian forebears, the Soviets have seen military power as the main guarantor of the survival of their state and its revolutionary mission in the world. The Soviets defined their security primarily as a function of military power. The early Soviet state was extremely weak and saw itself surrounded by hostile capitalist states, some of which had actively participated in the Russian Civil War. The Bolsheviks, having barely subdued their internal opposition in the formation of their revolutionary state, were also very sensitive to internal security. Beset by enemies within and without, the Soviets developed a siege mentality, which they maintained to a surprising extent to the present. Over the years, the Soviets have come to define their security requirements as extending well beyond the protection of the homeland and communist rule to control of adjacent regions and subsequently, with the advent of long-range nuclear weapons, to regions far removed, such as the United States. The Soviets have also fixed on military power as the main means of encouraging conditions in which they can realize their foreign goals. Their massive investment in military forces since World War II, and especially under the Brezhnev regime since the mid-1960s, gave them dominance, if not outright control, over the key regions adjacent to the Soviet borders. But the real dividend on this huge and long-term investment came in the late 1960s. As a result of the growth of Soviet strategic nuclear forces, the United States implicitly acknowledged Soviet arrival as a superpower, where Soviet ideology and socioeconomic models had only superficial influence in the Third World. The Soviets have found entree and influence through their military. The earliest Soviet military client was the Republican side in the Spanish Civil War, followed by the Kuomintang government of Chiang Kai-shek from 1938 to 1940. Since that time, the Soviets have armed the Arab world in its struggles with Israel, made Cuba a well-armed and well-trained force in the Caribbean, and also capable of expeditionary adventures in Africa, and gathered a variety of other clients in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The attraction has been the availability of Soviet arms, military advisors, and political support.